Hello, hello, hello. Welcome into Fantasy Life right here. Fantasy Life on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is here. You have made it. NFL Draft is tonight. Congratulations, because we've gone a long time, Adam, with any, significant news in the NFL. So this is like Christmas morning. How you doing? How's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm just excited that finally tonight we learn the destinations of some of the top players, because as we lead up to the draft, you just hear so many different rumors and smoke screens, and yeah, it's fun, but at the same time, I just want to know who is going where so we can get rid of these rumors.
No more rumors. We're ready to go. We've got everything going on tonight, and it's going to be just so exciting. Want to remind everyone, though, SiriusXM, they're going to have live pick-by-pick coverage starting tonight at 8 Eastern. You've got instant projections, analysis from the fantasy football perspective, so make sure you keep it locked right here. Channel 87 in the car and on the SiriusXM app. And then we've got, of course, we're going to be doing our thing over there at fantasylife.com, so you can go and check that out. And just a reminder, 25% off the first year of any Fantasy Life Plus package with promo code EARLY25, EARLY25. Adam gets you 25% off. So once the draft is over, you can go look at all the projections, look at everything you need to do. It's going to be a loaded day, and we've got a great show too.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for discounts. Anytime I see like a discount, I'm in. Like, how can you not? You get some money off. That's how you save, right? And we're looking to save in this economy. So take advantage of it now while it's there before it's gone. You don't want to regret passing on it.
Yeah, save some money. Again, early 25 over there at fantasylife.com. That's 25% off any Fantasy Life Plus subscription. NFL draft tonight. So, just lock it in. Lock it in now. All right, we've got a lot to go through. Like I said, Adam, we've got a loaded show today. Again, congratulations, everyone. You made it. NFL draft tonight. Before we kick things off with just a little bit of news, I want to know what you're most looking forward to tonight. If there's a specific player, if there's a specific team besides the Cowboys. You can't say the Cowboys, but other than the Cowboys, what are you most interested in tonight?
Well, obviously fantasy players. So Ashton Genty, the receivers, obviously Shedeur Sanders is a massive story that is just, it's crazy how it has transpired with him, where we felt he was an early top pick, and now seeing the latest, he was about, I think, the 21 and a half over under on him. So clearly it doesn't feel like he's going to go in the top 10. So I think that's one of the biggest stories that we are all watching, whether you play fantasy or an NFL fan. That's like one of the biggest stories. But obviously I always am looking at the fantasy skilled players, but also offensive lines. We talk about it, but I think sometimes the flashy players are what gets the attention. But we all know if you don't have a good offensive line, the offense collapses. So you always are looking at teams bolstering the offensive line as well. So, yeah, there's a lot. Nothing specific. Obviously, as a Cowboys fan, I hope that they make the right pick. But you said to exclude that. But, yeah, there's just so much to follow tonight. And it seems like it's going to be a wild, unpredictable draft just because we don't have elite top-tier talent. You're hearing people say anywhere from pick 5 to 6 to 20. There's not a huge difference. And different teams have evaluations, and they might feel this player is way higher on their board. So, yeah, it's a puzzle that's going to be a wild one to solve tonight.
Different teams, different needs. You can just tag the Seattle Seahawks when you're talking about offensive line. You don't have to, you don't have to dance around it with me at Seattle Seahawks. Please go out and get Gray Zabel. I think that's the only thing that I want is any interior offensive lineman is what they need. You got Sam Darnold there. Imagine Kenneth Walker with a good offensive line. Oh my gosh, that'd be great. I think for me too, Adam, you mentioned Ashton Genty, but I'm just curious about these rookie running backs as a whole and where some of these guys end up, because we've been told for months, right? This is a deep rookie running back class. And while Dwain McFarland says, it could be deep, maybe not elite, depending on the landing spot, they could really shake up just fantasy football and the landscape for some of these teams, because we already know the top ones, right? It's the Denver Broncos, it's your Dallas Cowboys, it's the Las Vegas Raiders. But then there are some others that you get down to when you talk about the Chicago Bears. If they actually are able to get Ashton Genty, they only have DeAndre Swift. I want to throw out the Kansas City Chiefs, because not that it's going to be a first round pick or anything, but for all intents and purposes, Isaiah Pacheco is one that we could keep an eye on and say, depending on who it is, he could maybe beat him out for that RB1 spot. Same with the Cleveland Browns and Jerome Ford, the New England Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers with Jalen Warren. There's actually a lot of different landing spots and scenarios where we could look at these, maybe not night one specifically, but these weekend picks and say, wow, they really they landed Travion Henderson, they landed Omarion Hampton. We really like them, and they could beat out some of these guys.
Yeah, that's especially true for day 2. I don't see maybe 2 running backs going tonight, possibly 3. So, and we know Genty, wherever he goes, he's going to be the top back, especially when you look at the teams that are eyeing him. So we might only find out about one other backfield tonight, but definitely over the weekend, it's going to be a big shift in some running backs that you were liking maybe for the upcoming fantasy football season. Their roles can change after this draft.
Omarion Hampton. Genty, Omarion Hampton, I think for sure. And then that might be it. Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins are like the 3 next if you really like them. But it's day 2 is what we're going to look for. And we're going to react to those at the same time. But Omarion Hampton, I assume will be off the board tonight. Same, of course, with Ashton Genty. But we're going to break down some of those running backs here in a little bit as well. Let's go. And I've got some news that I just want to hit off the top because some of it is, it does help the draft, help others maybe. Let's start with the Seattle Seahawks because there was a story that came out on ESPN asking if the Seattle Seahawks draft a QB for the 3rd time in 15 years. I'm not only talking about this because I'm a Seahawks fan, but it really just goes into play, Adam, with the conversations we've had all week about these quarterbacks. Is it going to be, it's going to be Cam Ward going number 1, and then there's this huge question mark of Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck. And so it's interesting that ESPN kind of posed this question and thought to themselves, Schneider did come out and say on the radio last week, it's a great situation. They have 4 guys that they really like. And so if it was anyone going anywhere, I would hope for the Seahawks, maybe it was Jalen Milroe if I had my choice. But they do have a contract with Sam Darnold that I will say it was the 3-year, $100.5 million contract, but he does have an out after 1 season. And then they bring Drew Lock back into the fold, but he's being paid $5 million, $2.25 million total in guarantees. So there's a door to be open, and it'll be interesting for not only the Steelers and some of these other teams, but teams that need some backups potentially if they're going to go out and get some of these quarterbacks too.
I know Seattle has a lot of picks, but they also have a lot of other needs, and the quarterback class isn't strong. I know Schneider disagreed, and he felt that it was better, but I would be surprised if they took a quarterback here just because the other quarterbacks are being sought off after by Browns, Giants. Those guys pick early in the 2nd round. So unless it's someone they get in the 7th round who more than likely isn't going to be any good, it would be a little surprising to me if Seattle went quarterback at any point in this draft.
They hosted, I believe it was Shuck and Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
Twice. They used 2 of their 30 pre-draft visits on Shuck and Milroe. So they flew both of them out to obviously the Seattle Seahawks facility. So those are the 2 on the radar. I'd be shocked too, but again, it's the Seattle Seahawks, Adam. So sometimes they just look back and they say, you know what, maybe this is the time we get that. What was it, 3rd quarterback in 15 years or something like that? I don't know. But hopefully with this class, it doesn't happen. But something that's on the radar, of course, with the draft rumors. No draft rumor anymore, though, here. Wow, I was trying to do a good, no draft rumor here, Adam, to do a good transition. But let's talk Christian McCaffrey, because this isn't a rumor. This is straight from the source himself. He said he has no restrictions, Adam, as the 49ers offseason program opens. He said that he's, quote, feeling great. It's been a smooth process, a lot of hard work. He said as soon as the injury happened in Buffalo, this was his goal, to not miss a day of OTAs, be back ready to go, nothing hindering me, and that's where I'm at. And I will say that's something that we like to hear from a fantasy football perspective. I'm sure that's something that the 49ers like to hear, not only going into the draft, but just going into, these voluntary workouts are starting. Then you get the OTAs, you get the training camps and stuff. So good news for Christian McCaffrey.
It is. It's what you want to hear, especially if you have him in Dynasty or you were hoping to get him in an upcoming draft. Right now, we're looking at a guy that's going in the 2nd round, but easily could move up to late 1st round if these reports continue. I think, obviously, as you get closer to the season, you want to see that he gets through training camp. There's definitely concern about the age and the touches that he's had. He turns 29 in June. He has over 2,000 touches in his NFL career, and he has a history of injuries. So there absolutely is concern, but we all know when he is on the field, he's going to get a massive workload. Even last year, I think he averaged about 16 touches per game. And what he played, I think it was 4 games when he returned.
Yep.
Now, he didn't look the same, and you could understand that. He really didn't have a training camp and just throwing him right into the mix. But, they still fed him the football. The numbers weren't there, but I don't know how much we can judge on that. He was at 4 yards per carry, which is, we're not used to seeing that with McCaffrey and the 49ers. He did not have a rushing touchdown. He did have 15 receptions in 4 games. So I don't think we could take much away from it. The positive aspect you could say as well, he basically didn't do much last year. 65 touches. He should be fresh. It allows him to be healthy. But, the injury history is real. You could say whatever you want. Just look at the games played. This is since 2020. 3, 7, 6, 11, 16, 4. And as I always say, as you get older, except for me, you don't get healthier. You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't play football like Christian McCaffrey. So he's going to be a real key to drafts this year, because we could be looking and saying, wow, I can't believe that he was going late first, early second round if he returns to the form that we saw 2 years ago. 49ers offensive line is still a concern, as we saw late last year as well. So I guess if you take him now, you want to take Isaac Guerrero late as a handcuff.
Yes. And then if they go into this draft and get, a late round running back, because, it's really, when you look at the depth chart, it is Isaac Guerrero, Patrick Taylor, Jordan Mason out now with the Minnesota Vikings. So it's, those are the guys. We always talk about handcuffs, but when players show us and when they get injured, we never want to see it happen. But that's why it's so important. If they are later picks, like Isaac Guerrero is going to be, same with Patrick Taylor, like, you just go out and get them, because you just want to have that insurance just in case. And that's the bigger question, like you said, with Christian McCaffrey, is you can look at it, and it's going to be people looking at it 2 different ways. They could say Christian McCaffrey has played his best football. It's behind him. We should look at these injuries, and that's all the evidence that we need to know that we should not be drafting him in the first round of drafts. You're going to have the other side, Adam, say, well, he was injured, but now he has a full offseason, really a full season plus the offseason now, where he is able to get back. He's able to rehab and get healthy. And this is a fantasy-friendly environment. And I want any part of this 49ers offense that I can get. And if it's Christian McCaffrey on the 1-2 turn or in the first round, I'm going to take it, because that's already a discount, because it's the Christian McCaffrey for fantasy football. And that's, I don't know where I stand yet. I haven't drafted him. I haven't done a ton of drafts right now, just because it's really early. You like to see where these rookies go, and then you can kind of make your some of your decisions a little bit earlier in the season. But with Christian McCaffrey, it's one of 2 ways, and it feels like a lot of people are going to just be very split. There's going to be no one in the middle. You're either going to like him or you're going to not.
Yeah, there's certain players that that you will get or you won't get. If you're in the middle on McCaffrey, you're not getting him, because there's always going to be 3, 4, 5 people in that draft room who have the utmost optimism, remember what he did 2 years ago in 2023, and say that McCaffrey is going to return. You got to remember, though, that's the only real big year he's had in the last 5, 6 years. It's insane. Like, he just cannot stay on the football field. So I want to have optimism for him, but right now, the way I feel, I don't think I'm going to have him. But it can change. We're here in late April. So most of our big drafts, obviously, are August, early September, but we will be doing best ball drafts, that to prepare for the season and obviously get some action. So you have to make that decision if you're drafting, in the next few weeks. What are you going to do with McCaffrey? And some people might find him appealing, early second round at this point. So, I'll take a few chances. And again, if you do a lot of volume, you probably want to have a little, right, in case he does return to the form we saw 2 years ago. But I wouldn't be heavily exposed, because I do think there's still risk. Remember, he came back and landed on the knee and was hurt.
Yeah, but it was a snowy. He should have. I don't know. It was a snowy Buffalo game. I didn't even expect him to be out there. But you're right. I mean, he did go out there and he didn't look the same. 2023 is where he averaged 24.7 fantasy points in 2023.
And
he had
that's
272 carries in 16 games.
Right.
That was insane.
And 67 receptions. So people remember that. And there's not many running backs that you can say can do that, which is why people will say, well, how can I pass up that upside in late first round, early second round? but there definitely is major risk with him because, again, that's the only year he's played 16 games since 2019.
Yeah. It's the upside. You get blinded by the upside of Christian McCaffrey and a good offense, and you say, hey, if he's fully healthy after a year, really a year of rehabbing now, he's going to be fine. But I go back and forth. I don't have my answer yet. I'm leaning towards the side with you where I'm probably going to be a little bit more out on Christian McCaffrey than others, because I always say we have to follow the signs and the examples we're given when we talk about injuries. And there have been examples, and we have an extensive history with Christian McCaffrey and his injuries. But then again, Adam, I don't know, middle of the second round, I see Christian McCaffrey sitting there. I don't know if I could say no to that. He won't be in the middle of the second round, but we could dream.
Right, he could be for now, but as these reports continue to come out, and if they're all positive, he'll slowly creep up.
Yeah, first round pick. I think he's right there right now. He's on the 1-2 turn.
He'll probably go in the first round. Yeah, if he's completely healthy and there's no setbacks, he will go in the first round.
Yep, I agree with you right there. All right, last just little quick piece of news here, because it is draft night. We are so excited to have you here listening to us at Fantasy Life right here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Diana Rossini put out at The Athletic. You can go and check it out, what she's hearing right before the NFL draft. Expect the Rams to once again show interest in a tight end in the first round. Last year, they tried and failed to move up to select Brock Bowers. I'm told Sean McVay could once again try to move up to get their guy. That could be interesting for us. We already talked about the Rams yesterday a lot, saying this is an offense we're going to want. They're kind of pricey right now on Underdog. You tell me they get a Colston Loveland or something, or they trade up for Tyler Warren, I'm in.
Yeah, I would be surprised by that, because I think you have to move up quite a bit, but we've seen at times when he's been healthy, Tyler Higbee put up some numbers in this offense. So if he wants a tight end, that would be like the third option, obviously behind the two wide receivers. So it's definitely, I don't think those top two tight ends they'll land in the Rams. You'd have to trade up pretty high to get them.
Maybe they want their guy. Can you imagine missing out on Brock Bowers and seeing the season he had and sitting back and saying, "Yikes! Well, we could have used that. That would have been nice." Come on.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams are saying that, and a lot of fantasy teams who passed on Brock Bowers like, "Wow, what did I do?"
He was so. Don't you miss when Brock Bowers was so cheap? What was he was going so late?
Ninth, 10th round.
Yes,
at a certain point. Probably I had him on one team. I think it was round 9 or round 10.
Yeah, I had him on one, and I should have had him on a lot more. But it's fine.
It's easy to say that now.
Yes, I'm not going to make the same mistakes, though, with Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland. But we're going to talk through what the expectation should be with two of those tight ends here coming into the 2025 draft. We're going to talk a lot more about the quarterbacks, too, with Lawrence Jackson here from NBC Sports coming up next. It is draft night. You have made it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here today. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis, and who better to talk to, Adam, on draft night than Lawrence Jackson from NBC Sports. Lawrence, how you doing? How's it going?
I'm good. I can't complain. And I won't take that as a rhetorical question. Who actually is better that you could talk to now about this draft here?
No one. That's why we have you here, because we need all your expert insights on everything for just fantasy football in this draft overall. I'm curious to start, Lawrence, just like what your overall picture is with this draft and this group of offensive players, because we've heard, for a long time, hey, this is a really good group of running backs. The quarterbacks aren't nearly as good. These tight ends are all right. And then the wide receivers are pretty, we're pretty light on talent in the wide receiver group. So is that kind of what you've seen in your evaluation of these guys?
I think in every single draft, you could find some good players. I can guarantee you that there's a player out there right now who's going to get picked in the 4th or 5th round. We'll be starting in our fantasy drafts. Look no further than Puka Nacua just 2 years ago. There's always good players in the draft. If there wasn't good players in the draft, they wouldn't have the draft. That's why they draft so many players. It's just that, we got to pick and find them. And sometimes they just come out the blue on all of us, to be honest.
Well, when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, people either really like him or they really hate him. I mean, he is one of the players that people are split on in this draft. Where do you fall on Sanders? Do you think he'll be successful in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he'll be successful. He's going to be great. And to be honest, I don't have to see him go to a specific team or anything like that, because I've seen him play at Jackson State. They were a bad team. I've seen him play at Colorado. They were a worse team. considering what conference and where they played at and stuff like that. And what you just said, Adam, you said people like him or hate him, and I love him or hate him. And I really think that's true too. There's people that say, "Well, I don't love him, I just like him." Them people don't like him either. So you're right on that, man. It's like either one end of the seesaw with Shador, but I think he'll be a fine quarterback at the next level.
You said that, it doesn't really matter to you where he lands. Do you have, though, a landing spot that you could prefer for a fantasy football perspective? Like, we know that the Saints there's the Saints rumors, there's Steelers rumors, there's the Cleveland Browns trading back into the first round to get him. What's your favorite landing spot for Shador?
Yeah, when we're talking about fantasy, the favorite spot, especially when you talk about what's around him, it's got to be the Steelers because you got DK Metcalf, and for now, at least, you got George Pickens. Now, the question would be, and what would be questionable, is that they still got the same offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, who, as we know, is not he don't love to throw the ball, right? But here's my thinking here, right? You trade for DK Metcalf, you sign him to a large contract. You're in a division with Joe Burrow and Lamar, and they whooping you every year, especially the Ravens. So you gotta figure out sometime you gotta switch it up. You need a guy who could, maybe you won't get the dynamic athlete at quarterback like Lamar, but you can at least get a guy who could get your receivers the ball. There's a chance that four Colorado wide receivers may get drafted. Maybe all four get drafted. Maybe two of them do. Like we know Travis Hunters, but there's a chance four Colorado receivers get drafted. Well, who the quarterback? Who the one who that shows you he could get his guys the ball, and that's what you want for your receivers in fantasy.
After Ashton Genty, who is your favorite running back in this class?
Well, first I'll say, Adam, I think the gap, I think differently than most is, I still think Ashton Genty's the best running back, but I think the gap is closer to him in Amari and Hampton than most people feel like. But for fantasy purposes, I'll say Trevion Henderson right now because he's a guy who he's not gonna go in the top 10. Sneaky teams that could pick him at the end of the first round. You talk about the Commanders. You talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs took Clyde Edwards-Helaire a few years back, and that ended up not working out in the long run. But Trevion Henderson is a more explosive back than that. He's a back who could catch it out the backfield in seasons in college where he played at least 10 games. He averaged almost 25 catches, which is a lot in college football for a running back. So I would say Trevion Henderson, man, just because he could score from anywhere on the field.
Talking with Lawrence Jackson here again, NBC Sports, joining us here on Draft Night. I want to know, Lawrence, we're talking fantasy football, and for the past couple years, we've been spoiled with rookie tight end play. You got Sam Laporta, you got Brock Bowers, just doing great things in their rookie seasons. Do you think there's a tight end in this class? Well, it's between two, really, Loveland and Tyler Warren. Do you think either one of those guys could be the next Bowers, Sam Laporta?
Well, Bowers, no, but that doesn't mean they could be really productive because they could put up Sam Laporta type numbers and be a top 5 fantasy tight end right now. When you're talking about Colston Loveland, the team that takes him, you know what you're drafting him for. You're drafting him to be that safety blanket for whoever your quarterback is, right? It may be a team that doesn't have a bona fide wide receiver too. So we know his thing is pass catching, and he could block too. People say he can't block, but he could block. Then you get Tyler Warren, right? He's a guy who could do everything. He could throw you in a touchdown pass. That helped you for fantasy. He could run you in a touchdown pass. He told me personally that he would love to run the tush push and be the quarterback running the ball in. So think about that. This guy get 3 tush push touchdowns in a season. Like that's something that no other tight end will be doing in the league. Maybe besides Mark Andrews or somebody, but yeah, both of these guys got a chance to be really productive out the gate.
Outside of Travis Hunter, who's your favorite wide receiver in this class?
Favorite wide receiver in this class. I'll probably bend it back to the second to third round and go with Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. I just like in fantasy, what we like the guys who could be effective from the slot. And Jalen Noel is not just a guy who could be effective from the slot in the short and intermediate areas. He runs deep routes from the slot up the seam. He's got 4.3 speed. He's, like I said, a guy who could work any parts of the field. So I would say him. I would love to see him get in a situation where a team has their top receiver already, and he could come in and kind of supplement that.
Travis Hunter, wide receiver one. If we get lucky with his landing spot, and they say, you know what, we actually do want to play you more full-time wide receiver.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he already the top receiver in this class, but if they're saying he playing full-time receiver, like if we know that sooner than later, I think it's all the way up for him at wide receiver, definitely.
Are you good with him going to because Cleveland Browns, it feels like for the last few weeks now, have been the favorites to get him. Is that landing spot for you? Do you like that for Travis Hunter?
No, I don't like it for Travis Hunter. It's the Browns, but he still could, especially with them quarterbacks, but he still could be good there. Because what you saw at Colorado is they could get him the ball any type of way. He took a lot of screens to the house. He's ran reverses. Like if they're gonna draft him, they're gonna use him. And so regardless, I'm gonna like his skill over the team that he plays for.
Who do you feel is getting too much hype or is a little overrated right now?
Probably Jackson Dart. When you talking about first round type of stuff, I think that's probably a little overrated, especially because most of it came, after all the football was done actually being played, which, that happens. A lot of guys go up and down, during the draft process when no football is being played, but there was a lot of quarterbacks during the college football season that was, talked up as the could possibly be the top guy, and they fell off one by one, and then boom, now we got Jackson Dart, who I think is still a solid prospect. I would take him in rounds 2 to 3, which is still pretty good. But if we're talking about him as a first round player, then I would say it would be overrated.
All right, Lawrence, last one before we let you go here. I want to know, since it's draft night, we've talked dream landing spots. It can be any player for you throughout this draft, but if you could be granted one wish for fantasy football this week and you could have one dream landing spot for one of your favorite players, who would it be? Where would they be going?
I'm gonna go back to Shedeur Sanders because he's gonna make the wide receivers on our team. He'll make more wide receivers viable in fantasy. Think about it. Now, we know the Giants got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but let's say Shedeur goes to the Giants. Somehow, some way he ends up on the Giants. Now I'm thinking about drafting a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson. All we hear about Shedeur is how his passes are at or behind the line of scrimmage. Who would that benefit? A guy like Wan'Dale Robinson. That'll put him on the fantasy radar. We're not thinking about Wan'Dale Robinson right now with Russell Wilson and especially Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston will be good for Malik Neighbors, right? Yeah. So, get him on the Saints. Now we're talking even more about a guy like Rashid Shaheed, so I would say just get him on a team and get the receivers important in fantasy.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us here, Lawrence Jackson from NBC Sports. Have a great draft, and hopefully we get to talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate y'all.
All right, there he goes again. So excited to have draft night tonight, Adam. We've made it all the way through fantasylife.com. That's where you can go and see all of our articles for tonight as well, 100% free. We're going to continue on here talking with Dwain McFarland coming up next. All right, fantasy football fans, NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Dwain McFarland did in fact crunch the numbers, and he is here with us to share them all on draft night with his walk-up music coming in. Dwain, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I think we need Pete so he can sing.
Yes,
know,
1,000%. I'm not
but
singing. And Dwayne in
Pete
the
was the
member.
one that would sing during that song. I guess that falls to
Yes.
Ronis. Ronis?
Yeah. Adam, you ready?
I'm pretty sure Kendall doesn't know who that is, right?
No.
I don't
Okay,
know.
Well,
I
I
figured
knew
that.
because of Dwayne, and I knew because of
Okay.
Dwayne and Pete. They
Yeah.
sang it to me for
We
last
schooled her on
last
some
year.
things, Ronis. I'm sure
Oh,
you
good.
schooled
For sure.
Kendall on some things too. You know.
Every-
Yeah, I don't know
But,
if they're positive, but yes.
This is fun. No, this is super fun. I love this segment already. It's my favorite. But we've got Dwain McFarland here again, fantasylife.com. That's where you can go and check out the rookie supermodel. That's all 100% free over there. Make sure you're giving Dwayne a follow for tonight's coverage at Dwain McFarland on Twitter. I want to know, Dwayne, because I think I missed this yesterday, and I did not ask you about Matthew Golden being maybe someone that you think could be a little overhyped going into tonight's draft, who, by the way, I mean, he's had a great pre-draft process. He's skyrocketed up a ton of boards, but you think maybe he could have some bust risk.
Yeah, what's really interesting is when I first started the process with the supermodel, it said Matthew Golden is underrated. Then, like, it just kept going and going and going, and now we're sitting at like pick 17 is the latest data that we have from all the mock drafts. Like when you compile them all together, like that's just really high. And so the way that I test this out, Kendall, is I just really go and I look at the supermodel, and we've got the main version of the supermodel people see on the site does include draft capital, right? It's the most important input in the model, but there's also a version that excludes draft capital, and the model's done really well without draft capital also. And so it just kind of compares the delta, like between how the non-draft capital version looks versus with draft capital, and it just really quickly shows you like the players that are probably the most propped up by the draft capital that they're getting, or the players that are the most like suppressed that by the draft capital we don't think they're going to get. And Matthew Golden definitely popped up on this list after this after I updated this morning. He is now 27 spots ahead of where the supermodel thinks he should be rated for wide receivers since 2018. So we are going back through all the classes to 2018. But essentially, whenever I put in a draft landing spot, Kendall, because I can play around with that in the back end, like once I get to like pick 45, then it levels out, and it's like, okay, no difference between the model without versus the model with. So it's essentially telling you that the model is valuing Matthew Golden, as a mid-second round pick, not a mid-first round pick. So almost a full round difference. And here's the thing, like the big thing around Matthew Golden, like his film rating in the supermodel is really good. Like Lance Zierlein from NFL.com liked him. And if you listen to other analysts, that are breaking down the film, there's a lot of folks that do like him. The problem is he's not been very productive. So if you look at his production rating in the supermodel, it's 78, which is good for a round 2 wide receiver. But if you go back and look at all the guys that were round 1 wide receivers, or let's say pick 15 through pick 32 in the first round since 2018, their average production rating in the supermodel was 83. And remember, everything's on a scale from 50 to 100. So he's 5 points below that. And whenever I go and I isolate down to the players, Kendall, that meet that criteria of, the film analysts kind of liked them, but their production, they had actually never shown it in a big way in college. So, hey, projectable traits kind of player, right, is what people are saying.
Okay.
Like what you see on the film, he could do more maybe when we get to the NFL, but hasn't necessarily done it at the collegiate level, even after adjusting for teammates and everything. Here is the list. It's going to get cringy. So, Jahan Dotson.
Okay.
That's a bust. Can we call that a bust at this point?
Yes.
Kadarius Toney.
Oh.
And one more. Can you guess one more? This one's terrible. Like, I don't even really want to bring it up, but I feel like I have to.
Who?
Jalen Rager.
Oh my gosh. Dwayne, how can you you can't even look at those names and say anything nice.
I know you really can't. And
bad.
I'm not saying that like guarantee. Look, we're going back to 2018. Like, so we're not saying this is a guarantee. Obviously, this is a smaller sample size, but historically, players that had this sort of film rating that he's getting also showed more in college than what he did. So the supermodel is concerned, and that's why it's really giving him a second round grade. It's saying, hey, in round 2, fine, take a guy that you're projecting his traits that hasn't shown it yet, or a guy that showed it, but maybe you might not see the traits or the athletic testing. But in round 1, like typically you're trying to find guys that check more boxes. So I really just think what's happening here, Kendall, is it's not a very good draft class for wide receiver. And so players are getting pushed up, and what's happening is people locked on to Golden because, oh, he's fast. He can play outside. He can do the thing that these other guys can't. And so now his draft capital has become inflated, and the supermodel is screaming danger. If the Cowboys take him, I'm going to cry.
Yeah, look, if he didn't have that 4.2940, we're probably not.
Which might not be real.
Right, that too. That's a good point. So we spoke with Zach Jackson yesterday, who covers the Browns for the Athletic, and he anticipates if the Browns select Travis Hunter, he'll be primarily wide receiver. If you knew that he was going to play primarily wide receiver, would he be the first receiver in the model?
Oh, absolutely. So Travis Hunter is like this weird prospect that I had to basically like make a special rule in the model for Ronis, because if I give him that, over a top 3 pick, with how much draft capital matters, like immediately it's going to push him up to the very heights, the top heights of the board, like close to Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jalen Waddle was another that was really strong in the model. And I had to essentially say, okay, what do I think this player is worth if he just played wide receiver? Where do I think that he would go in the draft? And I just basically use like some other production scores and some grades from Lance Zierlein to say, okay, players typically in this range went between picks 10 and 15. So I'm valuing him purely as a wide receiver. He would be somewhere between pick 10 and pick 15. I do think he would be the wide receiver 1 overall, but I don't think he's in the same class as Malik Neighbors, even Marvin Harrison Jr., some of these other Jamar Chase is obviously another one. But the next tier below that, I think, is where he belongs, which, by the way, one of his comps came out to being Justin Jefferson in the model, which is really good for him. I do think he's almost a lock to at least be a wide receiver 3 in fantasy within his first 3 years, but the model really sees him more as like a mid-range wide receiver 2 with that wide receiver 1 upside. So yeah, he would move to the top wide receiver position in the supermodel rankings. If we did hear like he goes pick 3 and they immediately tell us he's playing full-time at wide receiver, at that point, like he would be really high in the model.
Well, because you also gave me projections for the Travis Hunter multiverse piece. And it was like, and you said, a little of it hinged on them not relying on Kenny Pickett to be their starting quarterback. But the projections you gave me for him potentially.
Now, Kendall.
Oh, it's fine, Dwain. It's getting a little bit better. We're getting closer. Like they understand
That's definitely
the idea.
better than Kenny Pickett.
Like, but the projections you gave me for him, even with what was it, 90% targets per route run, like he was getting 1,000 yards in a season.
Yeah. I mean, it put him at that borderline wide receiver 2 range, if I remember correctly. It would be a little higher now because I've adjusted the projections and I gave at least half. I gave like 10 games to Flacco and 7 to Pickett. Obviously, there's a good chance that they're trying to, secure another quarterback early in round 2 or trade back into round 1. I know you guys had some good conversations around that yesterday. So we'll see what ultimately happens with the quarterback room. But the big thing is we do have to upgrade from Kenny Pickett. That's the scary part. But 90% route participation for Travis Hunter would be very, very fun, regardless of who the quarterback is. A lot of upside for big spike weeks, especially in best ball.
Yeah, Zach Jackson said Jalen Milroe. He's thinking for them. So we'll see, we'll see. And not, it's right now. We might see tonight. So we have to just wait a little bit. Dwain, I want to know from your pre-draft process, switching over to running backs, if you have a favorite running back who, isn't Ashton Genty, if there's someone in the model that you just, when you were going through all of your whole process, you really liked and who really stood out to you.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, it's a deep class, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I mean, obviously Omarion Hampton is the second guy in the model, Kendall. I don't think he's on the same level as Genty. I've heard some people say, hey, they're really in a tier together. Like the model doesn't agree with that at all. But what I will say with Omarion Hampton, if he gets draft capital, like, even early round 2, late round 1, where he's going to grade out in the model, from a fantasy perspective, 92% of those comparisons have actually gone on to be a running back 3 within their first 3 seasons. I know people are like, oh, running back 3, that means top 36. I don't care. Well, 77% of them, 77% went on to finish in the top 24. 62% became top 12 running backs.
Wow.
So that's a really good hit rate for a player like Hampton. Not like a special player in the passing game, Kendall, but good enough. Like if he landed on a team that didn't have a passing down back, he could be out there on pass downs, kind of like a Jonathan Taylor, guys like that. So I really like Omarion Hampton. But the name that I fell in love with in the process was really Travion Henderson. I know he ended up splitting the backfield at Ohio State, but that happens a lot at these big programs, right? You rarely see these backs just take over the whole thing whenever you've got a guy like Quinshawn Judkins, transferring in the final season. Obviously, they wanted to divide things up. But if you go back to that freshman season when Travion just really burst onto the scene, because he really had injuries those next 2 years that were a little bit of a problem for him. And then you got the senior year where he had to play with Judkins. I think you got to see the true version of what he could look like. So yards per team attempt, which doubles receiving yards versus rushing yards. Go back to 2017, he had one of the best freshman seasons ever, right? And on that list, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, and Saquon Barkley. So the electric playmaking abilities there. I don't know that he ever turns into like a guy that can play 65, 70% of snaps in the NFL, but I also disagree with people that act like they know that for sure. Right. Those are the same people that thought Devon Achane would never play more than 35, 40% of the snaps. Sometimes if you're just really good, you have a way of convincing your coaches that, maybe he is a little bit smaller. We're going to have to get him on the field. And by the way, Travion's bigger than Jahmyr Gibbs. He's bigger than Devon Achane. So he's actually got the frame that I could see him actually, I think there are outs where he could be like this full-time back that never leaves the field. And could you imagine, Kendall, with the recent steam, what if he does go to the Chiefs at the end of round one? And we're hearing those rumors now. Peter Schrager, put out his new mock draft. So man, Travion Henderson, if he went to the Chiefs at 31, I think we'd all be pretty elated. I think we would all be over the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing. I know some people are still wounded, but this is a different player.
Yeah, I think we're over it right now, actually. And then a lot of people would look and be like, how did we let the Chiefs get Travion Henderson that late? But that's something we could look forward to. Dwain, appreciate you hanging out with us. Good luck with everything tonight. Sure. I get to talk to you after the draft, and I hope the Cowboys don't make you cry. That's all.
Yeah, I hope so too. But looking forward to breaking it down with you and Mr. Harditz after the draft. So yeah, thank you, Kendall.
Awesome.
And thank you,
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right, everyone can go and find everything you need for tonight's draft. FantasyLife.com, 100% free for those articles. We're going to continue going through mock draft mayhem and talk about Peter Schrager's newest mock draft. We're going to do that coming up next. Oh, we are here. We are so excited because it is draft day 2025. You made it. Congratulations. It's like Christmas in April here, Adam. And we're excited to have you here with us. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis, Fantasy Life on SiriusXM, Fantasy Sports Radio. Just a reminder again, because I'm pushing you guys to the website, FantasyLife.com. All those articles 100% free. But if you've been thinking about a Fantasy Life Plus subscription, we're doing a 25% off discount code, early25. EARLY 25 for 25% off your first year of any Fantasy Life Plus package. So if you're there on the website and you've been thinking about it, now's the time to do it. Adam, we are going to continue going through some of these mock drafts. Peter Schrager put one out yesterday over there at ESPN. There were some interesting things that we could take away from a fantasy football perspective from this mock draft. The first one being Ashton Jeanty to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Seems like not only it's been picking up steam over these past couple days, it feels like that's the thing that I've seen people mocking him to that team a lot. Same with Tyler Warren going over to the New York Jets. Indianapolis Colts trading with the Chicago Bears to get Colston Loveland was one that also interested me. If those three things happen, Tyler Warren off the board, and then they go up and get Colston Loveland, trade with Chicago. That means obviously Chicago's not getting Ashton Jeanty because he went to the Jaguars, but that would be big for them.
Yeah, for sure, because I felt we see a lot of the mocks that the Colts at 14 getting Loveland, but maybe they feel the Bears could take him. Jeanty, that's the interesting one because you're right. That's only recently that it has picked up steam for Jacksonville.
Days.
Now,
out of nowhere.
Could that be because they are trying to trade down, accumulate more picks, and they know there's several teams that are high on Jeanty, including the Bears? That's something I'm watching to see if a trade is made, but yeah, Liam Cohen, an offensive guy, and you want to get an offensive player, and there you go, take the top running back, and Travis Etienne. That means maybe he gets moved.
Sorry, Travis. But we're not really necessarily pounding the table for Travis Etienne in fantasy for 2025. So, but that's the thing, Adam. Like, I could see it being a little bit of a smokescreen. Like, hey, Liam Cohen saying, you know what? I want to get a haul of picks. If you want this 5th overall pick, actually, we're thinking about taking Jeanty. You have to come and call us. But I could also see Liam Cohen saying, hey, best player available on the board. They have a ton of needs for this team, but he said this offseason that they need to get better at running the football and they need to help help Trevor Lawrence in that department as well. So if you can get the best running back in a tier of his own, like I could honestly see it happening now at 5. But whichever one it is, that's going to be Genty is just going to be the biggest, most interesting pick. And same with Shedeur Sanders. Those are the two we're watching very closely. Let me tell you this one: Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Teteroa McMillan. For fantasy purposes, we don't like it at all. But then he goes on to say, McMillan could, learn from Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. But man, sending the best wide receiver to a team where now it's a 3-headed monster. No, thank you.
No, this would not be good for the upcoming season, maybe long term. But yeah, it would take an injury for him, more so to Mike Evans, for that to pan out this year. So that would be very disappointing for fantasy because we're all assuming McMillan's going to go to a team where he could put up numbers this year.
This one makes me nervous and I don't like it. Don't do it, Tampa Bay. Let someone else, let the Panthers, they need to get Bryce Young some help. Let the Panthers take him and just go along your merry way there. So again, that's the mock draft from Peter Schrager at ESPN. We're going to continue on here. It is time for that Fantasy Life Water Cooler, going through all the news and notes that you need to know ahead of draft night. Coming up next. You already know what time it is here. Time for that Fantasy Life Water Cooler. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today, getting you ready for the NFL draft. FantasyLife.com is also getting you ready for the draft, and we're going to be locked in tonight. So make sure you head over there. All of our articles 100% free. You got the Thor 500, you got the rookie supermodel from Dwain McFarland, and you have a promo code that you can use to get 25% off your first year of any Fantasy Life Plus subscription. So use code EARLY25 to get 25% off with that promo code. We've seen a little bit of a sneak peek, Adam, at the tools coming for this season. We've seen some of the upgrades that we're getting, and while we can't say everything, we can let you know that they're going to be absolutely epic. So head over there, fantasylife.com, use that code EARLY25, EARLY 25% off your first year of any Fantasy Life Plus subscription. And be ready not only for the draft tonight, but for fantasy football season. It's never too early, Adam, to be talking about.
It's not. Anytime you want to be successful at something or be dominant, you got to put in the work early. So it starts now, and we give you all the tools that you need. So make sure you sign up now. Take advantage of that discount. Don't let it slide.
Gotta let you know. And then, of course, you want to keep it locked right here on SiriusXM. You're going to have live pick-by-pick coverage starting tonight at 8 Eastern, instant projections and analysis from, of course, a fantasy football perspective. So keep it locked here. We've got a lot of good news to go through here, Adam. So let's start off the top with Jacksonville. I know that we were just kind of mentioning Jacksonville because in that latest mock draft from Peter Schrager, he had the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Ashton Genty at 5. And then you get reports from Ian Rappaport saying that Jacksonville is actually potentially looking at trading up to the 2nd overall pick to snag Travis Hunter. It feels like every day it gets more and more aggressive with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now this is about as far as they can go because they can't trade with the Tennessee Titans because they're locked in at number 1 to take Cam Ward. I bet that they would, if they could, they'd take the number 1 overall pick. But Jacksonville, man, could they make a splash?
It sounds like it's possible. Look, there's so many smoke screens out there. You just don't know what to believe. We hear this every single year. There's been other teams linked to calling up to number 2. The thing with Jacksonville is they have several needs. Running back really wasn't a primary one, which is why we were like, Genty, okay, but we get it, right? It's not an elite class, and sometimes you just take the best player on the board, and that's probably the case with Genty. But when you look at Jacksonville, they could use a wide receiver, but not going to take a wide receiver there. I would be surprised if it was Ted McMillan there, but they do have needs on the defensive side of the ball, from defensive line to the secondary with safety and cornerback. So what does this mean? Are they looking at Hunter to be more of a cornerback? He said he wants to play both, right? So
I guess.
Yeah, so
this would be a nightmare for fantasy, though. If we've talked before about, not good landing spots for Travis Hunter and just thinking about, okay, how are they going to deploy him? Is it really going to be a 50-50 split? We like the Browns because it feels like, and they have said that they see him more as a wide receiver than they do a cornerback. But Jacksonville, you're right. I mean, I didn't even think about the need that they have at corner. And then, wide receiver wise, we know that they have a wide receiver 1 over there already, but they could use help. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, for all that they've said, they want to get him developed. They want to help him not only in the run game, but just help him overall develop, because that is someone that has not lived up to expectations, Adam. So you say, hey, we're going to get someone that can play both sides, that can help us on offense, help us on defense. Wow, that would be crazy. They'd be making a new head coach, new GM. Like they just want to make a splash. He's 34 years old, by the way, that general manager, James Gladstone. Good name, though. Really good name. Strong name.
I would have liked to have been a GM when I was 34. That would have been nice.
He's the second youngest GM in NFL history. Wow.
A lot of pressure there.
Imagine, no kidding. It is a lot of pressure. It's going to and they're trying to get into this, new era. He spent time though, with the Rams draft operation, kind of working behind the scenes there. So that's not a bad organization to be with, to kind of learn from. It'll be interesting.
No, definitely a good blueprint there for success.
Yeah.
Now you have to do it in a way tougher situation there in Jacksonville. That needs a lot.
Wow. 34. That'll be interesting. So let's we got to keep an eye on those rumors. Of course, we've got all the rumors. Should we start a rumor, Adam? Maybe, do you think anyone's going to catch on? Say, a couple of people from Fantasy Life on Sirius XM started this rumor. I think we could tonight.
It could catch fire. You got to be careful.
All right, we'll think about the rumor. Maybe we could start one. I wanted to, next piece of the water cooler here, Rashee Rice, kind of getting into it, is running in his rehab after that season-ending knee injury. We all kind of know what happened with Rashee Rice. It was a bit unfortunate. Tore that LCL in his right knee in week 4, and we kind of knew right away that he probably wasn't going to make it back for the rest of the season. But there have been, Andy Reid's come out and said he can't necessarily, quote, I can't necessarily give you the return date, but doing well. So good news here at 24 receptions, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, it was just 4 games, Adam. It was someone we were kind of targeting in drafts, although there is still a looming suspension going on as well. So that's something you have to be careful with here. It's just, I'm interested to see what the Chiefs do tonight, because that is, like Dwayne said, another team where if you add a running back there, you're also going to be excited. So I'm curious how they have other needs, but of course for us in fantasy, we're looking at the offensive pieces they could get, but looks like Rashee Rice might be on schedule here.
Well, that's good to hear, especially if you were looking at Rice or you have him already in a dynasty league. He was someone I was very aggressive on last year. I just felt, reading everything, that the suspension was not going to happen last season, and was able to get him, 7th, 8th round. And then as we got closer to the season, people started to realize the same thing, like, oh yeah, he's not going to get suspended. So he started to move up, and I was still even taking him in the 4th, 5th round. I was that aggressive because I felt he was going to be the number 1. And boy, after those first 3 weeks, you sit there, you're like, yeah, what?
Yep.
It's only 3 weeks, right? But you're like, okay, this is what I envisioned. He had 9 targets, 6 and 14. He had 2 touchdowns, and he was the number 1 guy. And it felt like it was a home run pick. And then the injury occurred, and you're like, there's nothing you can do. So I still think he can be the number 1 guy in this offense, because we really did see Xavier Worthy emerge down the stretch. It was a bumpy ride, but he really, picked up his game and was getting some carries and became a guy that was more reliable. So when you have both of them on the team, really makes them dangerous, because we all know Travis Kelce is definitely on the downside. He'll be there, but we cannot expect the prolific numbers that we were accustomed to seeing. He's more a guy that's just, he's not going to put up tight end, top 5 tight end numbers anymore. We already know that. So they're going to be going with these younger receivers. So I'm interested in Rice, especially that he's at least appears healthy right now, this early. It can easily change, but I'm definitely interested in Rice this year.
Yeah, there can always be setbacks. And again, we still have to wait on the potential suspension.
Yeah.
That's just, I don't know. In my opinion, you can't look at that situation and just think that the league's going to forget that happened. Even though he got injured, they're not going to forget that went on. So I've seen a lot of, differences in how long that suspension could be. So I'm not, we're not going to sit here and try and pretend like we know, but that's just something to keep on your radar. But yeah, it's good news. Like you said, anything can happen during the rehab process. There can always be setbacks, but you hope there's not, because he was kind of like Chris Godwin in a way when they went down last year. You just knew it was a good pick and that he was going to have that big season, just like Godwin. And then they go down and you're like, oh, come on. Like it was all right there ahead of him. But yeah, Xavier Worthy too, by the way. I mean, he was a fantasy playoffs superstar. I was just looking at his points, 19.6 fantasy points, week 15, 20.5, 22.9. He was a stud.
He really was. And there were people who probably dropped him at some point during the season because there were plays, if you remember, where he was just not getting in bounds. His footwork was off, and you could see Mahomes frustrated with him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with rookie wide receivers. We see a lot hit the ground running, and they're great. Others take some time to adjust to the NFL, and especially in a situation with Kansas City where they expect to win. Patrick Mahomes expects you to be in the right spot. It wasn't happening early on, and I think a lot of people might have moved on from him because if you look at his start to the season, there were some really bad games. There was a game against Tampa where he had no catches, just 2 targets. Even his snap count was low, and then all of a sudden it picked up down the stretch. And we've seen that often with some rookie receivers. They don't do much first half of the year. Second half, they could be difference makers in the playoffs. We saw it with Worthy, and we saw it with Jalen McMillan as well.
Yep, you just see them kind of lock in and start to understand more and more. And some players you don't have to do that, right? You're not talking like that with any of the top guys from last season, the top rookie wide receivers. But some of them it just takes a little while to get into that rhythm, to get into the groove of the NFL. So yeah, just something to watch out for. But overall, good positive news right now on Rashee Rice with his rehab. So we'll continue to watch that. Another one here. This was a few days ago, but I think it makes sense to bring it up now with the NFL draft that Zach Moss agreed to rework his deal to stay with the Bengals. All this to say, Adam, I'm still a little bit nervous. Like it's messy. If the Cincinnati Bengals go out and get a running back, it's messy, and I don't want it to happen because you and I took a lot of Chase Brown last season, but there could be upside there if they look around and they say, hey, we've got this strong offense with lead backs who have room to maybe get a compliment in there, not necessarily thinking it's Zach Moss, but I'm really watching them to see if they add another running back to this room.
The Bengals need defensive help. I would think that every pick they make would be defense, right? But
which sucks for fantasy, by the way. We're just like, hey, go ahead and leave that.
Well, I mean, from an offensive perspective, we all know that they're really good. The thing is, they don't have many picks. They have 6 picks. So can they afford to take a running back? It's going to be really interesting with them.
I hope not. Because Chase Brown.
Yeah, if you have Chase Brown in Dynasty, you don't want to see it. If you've already done best ball and you've drafted Chase Brown, you don't want to see it. And it was fun having Chase Brown last year. The first few weeks, it was, you didn't feel good about it. But if you stayed patient, he was one of the top backs. Like, you couldn't sit him with the production he was getting. So they probably don't want to work him like that. They really had no options on the roster last year to back him up. So if Moss is there, that's not a threat. You're like, okay, fine. He'll take a handful of carries away. You just don't want to see one of these talented backs. But yeah.
You don't think Zach Moss, do you think Zach Moss coming back fully healthy, they wouldn't try and get back into that 1A, 1B situation that they started in last season? Or do you think you can't put, the toothpaste back in the tube? Like, you've already seen how good Chase Brown is.
Who actually does that anyway? Does anyone try to do that?
That's why I try and say the genie and that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. But the only one I could think of right now was the stupid toothpaste one. Because who does that? Anyway.
I don't see it. Moss wasn't good. And
no.
Look, I think almost anyone in the fantasy community last year, we were all on the Chase Brown side. I can't imagine many were on the Zach Moss side. So we kind of all saw it. It's a matter of just they don't want to overwork Brown because he's not the biggest back. Now, he showed he could handle it, but I don't think you want to do that. But I cannot see Moss being in a split with Brown after what Brown showed last year. I don't think they'll give Brown the snap percentage because he was often around 90%. So I don't think they want to do that. So Moss there would not be a threat. Now, if you take one of these talented backs coming out of the draft, I'd be more concerned. But just looking at everything they need on defense and having only 6 picks, Man, I would be surprised if they did it.
Yeah, I would too. I'm looking at I thought they had more picks, but I guess yeah, they're towards the bottom. The Minnesota Vikings have the least amount of picks going into tonight at 4. Where are your Dallas Cowboys? Oh, 10.
10, yeah.
You and I sitting at 10. Seattle Seahawks 10. Now, what did we have to give up for that? Yeah, it was DK Metcalf. I don't want to talk about it, but yeah, you still got 10 picks there. So I'm with you. I just think it'll be interesting because some people have said, I've read a little bit of like, hey, be careful with Chase Brown because there's potential there with where they took him in the draft, and the draft capital that we talk about all the time, that maybe they add someone, but we'll just have to wait and see. Some team that I could see, again, because we talked about this with Dwain McFarland, adding to their running back room. Andy Reid and the Chiefs, going back to the Chiefs, had a call with Ohio State running back Travion Henderson Tuesday. That would be fun. They're going to add someone to that. That's one where we look back and we say, all right, yeah, you can add whoever you want to this backfield, and we're kind of going to be excited about it because I don't know. Are you excited about Isaiah Pacheco, who barely, beat out Kareem Hunt?
Well, I think the injury was a big thing with Pacheco, but yeah, at this point, you can't be that excited. He came back, and it wasn't the same player at all. I was excited for Pacheco going into the season because I thought it was going to be primarily his backfield, and it was playing out that way until he got injured. Then they brought in Kareem Hunt, who, again, for fantasy was fine, but it was all volume based. There were no explosive. Yeah, there was no explosive plays at all. Basically, he was there to move the chains, grind it out. He had one run of 20 yards. That's it. So there was just no explosive plays out of that backfield. So yeah, Henderson in that spot, that would be
amazing.
Yeah,
I was thinking, and yes, this is biased, but I wasn't thinking necessarily because Travion Henderson, depending on who you talk to, because a lot of people like Travion Henderson, where you could see him maybe sneak into the first round, but others are, you look at him and you say, okay, the second round. So I was thinking about the Chiefs. I don't know where they could take. They have the 31st overall pick. I don't know if it's that spot. I also saw Cam Skattebo. He's ours now, by the way. You just have to jump on the Cam Skattebo bandwagon. But, I saw him go in there as well. But really, any running back, that's why I'm so excited. I said this at the top of the hour. But, there's a lot that we're going to watch for, not only tonight, but in these next couple of days, especially with these day 2 running backs. It's going to be interesting where they land at them because there are so many teams with pretty open backfields that, depending on who goes there and what spot it's at, they could potentially be the RB1s by the time the NFL season starts. That's what's exciting.
Yeah, well, it is exciting for redraft leagues, dynasty leagues. You're holding your breath if you have some of these guys and you're hoping to depend on them for the upcoming season. But yeah, we could see a lot of shakeup in some of these backfields.
Which dynasty managers are most nervous for tonight? If we had to look, because Isaiah Pacheco, Javonte Williams, not a lot.
Yeah, you weren't
Audric Estime, Raheem Mostert. So any of the Genty spots, okay. Jerome Ford, maybe DeAndre Swift, huh? DeAndre Swift managers scared. Jaylen Warren, when they think they're like, finally it's time. It's Jaylen Warren's time for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to add someone. Same with the Cleveland Browns.
I would love to see Warren get the opportunity to be at least the lead back in the backfield because I draft him almost every year.
I would too. I'm a Jaylen Warren fan. I would also like to see him get that opportunity. But in the back of my mind, I'm just not holding out hope yet. It makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
You think Brian Robinson managers are worried? Dynasty managers?
Yeah.
Washington Commanders down there?
Yes.
Who else?
Were you really relying on him to do much at this point?
No. I'm trying to find good names. I'm trying to be nice here, Adam, with Alvin Kamara managers. Nervous?
Age is the biggest thing for him and the offense.
Yeah. Okay. But all that to say that we just named like 8 teams where we said, yeah, they're probably going to add someone and they could, be fantasy relevant. That's how fun this is going to be. Sorry, Dynasty. It just depends, but it's going to be fun.
We hope it's going to be fun. We'll find out.
It's going to be fun. Be optimistic.
Okay, fine. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Look at you. Okay. I'll get you the Cam Skattebo jersey. No, it kind of depends on where he goes, but I'll think about it. All right.
Yeah, I'm not wearing a jersey of a division opponent. I'm not doing that.
Even if it's like one of your favorite college, like if you have a favorite college player,
no,
you wouldn't do that.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't think I would do. Well, No, I wouldn't do it. I just the only bet I made with Thor is that if Cam Scatterbo went to the Minnesota Vikings, we said that we would get jerseys.
Okay, that's
probably
fair.
it.
I mean, it's the
feel like
same
that's fine.
conference, but at least it's not the same division.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. And I'll say, hey, you know, Sam Darnold, remember him? He's with the Seattle Seahawks now. It's fine. It's totally fine. All right, that was the Fantasy Life water cooler. Again, fantasylife.com. That's where you can go sign up for that newsletter. Check out all of our reactions here from the NFL draft at fantasylife.com. And again, use that promo code early25, EARLY 25, gets you 25% off the first year of any Fantasy Life Plus package. So if you've been thinking about getting a subscription there, make sure you head over there and do it now. 25% off. That is now through April 27th, early 25, 25% off. We're going to continue on here and talk with the one and only Thor Nystrom coming up next. We've got the one and only Thor Nystrom here with us. You know the music, you know the energy drinks, you know that it's Christmas for you, Thor. It's NFL draft night. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Of course, I'm doing well. This is the best day of the year. Coming off last night, football Christmas Eve. Once again, I watched draft day. It was my 10th straight year of that tradition, the Kevin Costner classic. But best day of the year. Excited to be talking draft with you guys.
What do you say to people that don't like that movie, by the way?
I say, you don't know fine cinema.
Perfect. Go watch. See, Adam, you have to go watch it. Were you the one that said that?
No, I didn't say that. What are you talking about? Don't put me in that category.
I thought you heard. We've got Thor here with us again. FantasyLife.com. You have mock draft up, and it feels like, Thor, this last mock draft that you put up, you were like, you know what? I'm just gonna stir the pot and have all the drama be in this one mock draft. So you all want to go and check that out at FantasyLife.com. Starting with the Chicago Bears going all the way up to 5, by the way, and getting the one and only Ashton Genty, which would be amazing for fantasy. And you have them trading with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I sure do. A trade that would work there, if Chicago gives up the 10th pick and the 41st overall pick, Chicago has 2 second-round picks. You just give up the one of them. You could get 1-5 and also get a 4th-round pick in return, 107. That more or less jives it. Chicago might have to toss in a slight sweetener, but that's pretty close. They're discussing this. I mean, this was reported, today or yesterday. Was reported that Chicago is sniffing around this trade. It's crazy. The odds markets on this thing. Ashton Genty had moved as of a couple nights ago to even money to go in the top 5 picks when the draft industrial complex had been thinking he was going to go to Las Vegas for about a month and a half. So, I mean, whether it's Jacksonville or whether it's a team moving up, and Chicago is exploring that possibility of moving up. So I think Chicago is in play to move up to poach Ashton Genty from Las Vegas.
Wow.
You have Dallas making a trade, moving up to 8 to get Tet McMillan. We've heard Dallas, at least what they said, if they make a trade, it would be to move down. We know teams don't always tell the truth, but how would this be McMillan a fit for Dallas?
Yeah, anything a team says publicly about their draft intentions, I do not trust. Just based on my experience over the years. And Tet McMillan, you are clearly wide receiver 1 in a bad receiver class. The drop off after him and then the drop off after Golden. And if you're Dallas, you need the complementary receiver to CeeDee Lamb. You miss out on McMillan. I saw a mock today. They had him taking a guard or another. I really do think they need that wide receiver, and it might be that they need to move up for Tet McMillan. I do not know if he gets to 12. So once the bullets start flying this evening, you might feel a little bit more pressure. You might have a little bit more impetus to toss in a little sweetener, move up a couple spots, and then bypass a couple of those teams in between that could pop Tet McMillan and just guarantee Tet for yourself.
That would be insane for them to go up and do that. And the same thing here, Thor. Again, we're going through Thor Nystrom's mock draft. FantasyLife.com is where you guys can all go and check it out. But you have this thing for San Francisco going over and getting Tyler Warren, which I know you told me maybe it was a month ago when we were doing a podcast. You said, listen, I have heard that they potentially could be looking at getting a tight end here, and you have them getting Tyler Warren at 9.
Yeah, San Francisco is exploring trades up to go and get an offensive skill difference maker. People would be surprised, but Ashton Genty is another guy that they are sniffing around. But Tyler Warren, they're very interested in. And we'll see the way that the board falls, right? I mean, there's a possibility that you only have to move up a couple slots, like in this exercise. Some people think that Warren could get all the way to 11. We'll just have to see. But I know that San Francisco is interested. The public discourse with San Francisco has been centered on they're going to focus on the trenches with that pick. I'm not sure that that is true from what I've been hearing. So we'll see the way it plays out in the top of the board, the way that that plays out if this possibility opens itself for San Francisco.
You have another huge trade with the Giants at 15 getting Shedeur Sanders. What makes you think that's a possibility?
Shedeur Sanders, his over under at the books, the slot prop has moved to like 21.5 or something like that, where it was 8.5 as of like 5-6 days ago. And even higher than that before. So now the expectation is of course, that slot, it's nodding at the Pittsburgh Steelers pick. I don't think he's going to get there. I think that a team is going to trade up to beat the Steelers to the punch here. And Cleveland and the New York Giants are the teams that are lurking, teams that we think are going to go non-quarterback positions at the top of the board. And that's probably the right call because they're going to get the two best non-quarterbacks in this class. And the only two guys probably, at those positions, you could say, best players in the draft, whatever. So moving up here, Atlanta is going to be an interested party. They're going to be listening to phone calls because Atlanta has some of the least draft equity in the league, and they have a lot of holes still. So Atlanta's sitting at the 15 spot. One of the ways you can flesh out your pick allotment is by accepting an offer from either the Cleveland Browns or the New York Giants, who sit at the top of the second round. Grab a couple extra day 2 picks, be it this year, be it next year as well. Do a mix and match with that. And then you can move up and grab Shedeur Sanders before a team like Pittsburgh has access to him.
We talked with Zach Jackson yesterday from The Athletic about the Browns potentially taking Jalen Milroe, and you also have him, Jalen Milroe, going to the Cleveland Browns in this mock draft at 30. So then them coming back in. What was your process like with Jalen Milroe? I remember there were highs and lows when we talked about him, Thor, because we almost started the offseason saying, okay, we like Jalen Milroe, and then it was kind of an up and down pre-draft process, it felt like.
Yeah, I thought right from the get that if Jalen Milroe had a really good pre-draft process, that he was going to be a top 5 pick, right? And you just see in that top 5 where he goes, because it would have been so eerily reminiscent to Anthony Richardson's. And then Milroe, he struggled at Senior Bowl, and then for whatever reason decided not to do the testing at the combine, which I think was an enormous mistake. He did salvage some of that by running at Alabama's pro day and showed that he was the stud athlete that you see on tape there. That's how he's getting back here in the talk of either late first round, early second round. It is an insane athlete. He ran the 4.4 flat, but he runs in the high 4.3s, and it's at 225 pounds. Right? I just think of that at running back, right? I mean, that is utterly freakish for a running back, certainly for a quarterback. Runs with power too, and then he's one of the best deep ball throwers to enter the NFL over the last decade. He's also one of the worst first-round prospect quarterbacks at throwing short and intermediate to enter the NFL in the past decade. I believe only Anthony Richardson would be worse in those categories. So it's, I comp Jalen Milroe to Happy Gilmore. He hits the ball a country mile, and he needs to be taught how to putt, and only just good enough, right? Just good enough, because you're going to be on the green before anybody else. And there's that team, the Cleveland Browns, that Zach was bringing up. It's a connection that I was starting to make with the thing with Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator there, was the offensive coordinator at Alabama in 2023 during the best stretch of football of Jalen Milroe's life. He knows how to construct an offense around Jalen Milroe. He's the only guy that we know for sure that we have data does. Right. I mean, there hasn't been another sustained stretch that long of Jalen Milroe dominance like we saw down the stretch 2023. If we had gotten that in 2024, he would be the first overall pick in this draft. He does have that kind of physical ability. So Tommy Rees, who has seen it up close, and now you have the possibility of, we're going to take the draft's best player in the number 2 slot, and we could move up just a little bit for top of the second. We can still get the 5th year on Jalen Milroe, bring him in as well. We'd enter into a very interesting era of Cleveland Brown football.
You have Matthew Golden, the wide receiver, going to Seattle. He has really seen his stock rise. Some people think it's too much. How do you think he fares in the NFL?
He's going to be a solid number 2 receiver in the NFL, like boundary receiver. He's going to do well in a situation where the other boundary receiver is like a legit star, because if you can just keep single coverage on Matthew Golden, he'll beat it. That's what it is. He's like, you shade coverage over and double team, stuff like that, or even the CB1s in the NFL, there will be guys that can stay with him. The good situation for him would be to be isolated in single coverage against the CB2. He will beat them in the NFL. So that's what he's going to profile as. I think it's a really good fit with Seattle because Seattle has the two good slot receivers in JSN and Cooper Kupp. They're going to play JSN on the boundary. The other guy on the boundary, they're intending for MVS. He's the projected starter there right now. Why not get a decent one? And Matthew Golden. And, there's been talk of, and we talked about this, Kendall, about the offensive line there.
Yep.
But the offensive line class is deeper than the receiver class, which falls off a shelf. Really, you could argue after Matthew Golden, right? There's a tier break then to the two slots, Buka and Burden. And then there's another drop off, the Iowa State kids, whoever you want to toss in there. But if you want to guarantee yourself one of two players in this class that start on the boundary and have proven they can win at all three levels of the field, you have to take Matthew Golden there. He's the last one on the stop of that. Not counting Travis Hunter, of course.
Thor, who is your favorite, maybe player that we haven't talked as much about this week? We hit, the top guys, right? We've talked to Marion Hampton. We've talked about Ashton Genty, Tedero McMillan, but who's a player that you've really liked throughout this whole process that might obviously not go day one, day two, that you think could make waves in the NFL?
Devin Neal, the running back from Kansas. I think he's going to go in round 4, and I think he's going to start in the NFL for years. It's a 220-pound back who has some of the best feet that you'll ever see. And he's going to be a better receiver in the NFL than he was in college because his college system, they didn't let him run routes past the line of scrimmage. He breaks ankles in the open field, even at 220 pounds. We've seen it at the Senior Bowl. The linebackers and the strong safeties could not stay with him in one-on-one coverage. And that, again, that's going to be the case in the NFL. So you have a big back with really sweet feet. There was someone who comped him to like a big version of Bucky Irving. And I actually see some of that, like the flow, the vision, the feel, the bad angles that he consistently gives to defenders, the ability to make them miss. There's a lot of similarities there. It's just that Devin Neal's in a bigger package. He is going to be a steal on draft day.
Oh, nice.
In this final mock draft, you have a lot of trades. Is that something that you just think teams are going to panic last minute and make these deals? Do you think we're going to see a lot of action tonight?
I love that you picked up on that, Adam, because there's two factors. The reason I did that is because that is what I expect. I expect there to be chaos this evening, and there's two factors for that. You don't have the amazing quarterbacks at the top of this class, and then you have a dearth of the elite non-quarterbacks. And because of that, you don't have as many locked in spots at the top of the board. Just think about mock drafts like last year, right? When you had the 6 first round quarterbacks and you had more of the elite premium position players than non-quarterbacks. So you knew that those guys were going to occupy X amount of spots at the top of the board in whatever order, right? Well, that made it easier for teams behind them to be able to predict, the road that it was going to take and the guys that they could have access to. This draft that begins tonight, it is a choose your own adventure where really you start at either at 3 or at 4, where there are so many different directions that each pick could go. And then you start thinking if you're at 12, 13, you start thinking if you're at 20, 25, it becomes a Doctor Strange thing. If each pick, it could go out 5 different ways, and then that changes. And then if you don't know who could get down to you, there's all these scenarios that are open. And so in this draft, we have seen no real big draft pick trades this spring, right? 0. And every single team has their first round pick. Those two things almost never happen in conjunction with one another in a draft. They have this year. And I think it's like all quiet on the Western Front. I think when we get Bell open tonight, I think we're going to see fireworks because, once those things start going, there's going to be guys falling down the board that I don't think you can expect, in advance. And I think that is going to lead to a ton of movement up and down the board.
Yeah, Thor, you've got us pumped up. We're ready to go for tonight. If everyone else wants to check it out, though, fantasylife.com, that's where the latest mock draft is from Thor Nystrom. Appreciate you hopping on with us and, Merry Draftmas or whatever you say. Have a great night.
Merry Christmas to you all.
All right, there he goes, Thor Nystrom. Again, fantasylife.com to check out that article. We're going to continue on previewing this running back class. We're going to do that coming up next. All right, fantasy football fans, the NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it. And all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. We are back. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis at KValenzuela17 at Adam Ronis over there on Twitter, on X, and it is draft night. Adam, so excited. Drafting just a few hours over here, getting ready for it, getting everyone ready this week. And you and Gene are going to be live tomorrow morning, by the way, going through everything.
Yes, 7 a.m. Eastern, breaking it down. We know
Love it.
We know you got a late night, so we'll give you a break.
Fine. Yeah, I hope we don't get our hearts broken. That's all I have to say, or else it'll be, just crying ourselves to sleep. It's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be great. Everything's gonna be great. We're going through running backs, though, talking through this great running back class that everyone has heard of. Of course, you and I have talked about it a lot this week. I don't necessarily think we need to say any more about Ashton Jeanty unless you want to say more great things about him. But we can go to the next best guy, who I know Dwain McFarland mentioned earlier in the show here today. But Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina is just going to be a great NFL player here. 2-year starter at North Carolina, beast during the 2023 season, led the ACC over there in rushing. And then, Adam, you look back and you say, well, it was even more impressive to see him repeat conference leading rusher in 2024 without Drake May, rushed for 100 or more yards in 10 of 12 games in 2024, and then had the single season record, 2,033 all-purpose yards. This guy is a beast overall. He's just one of these running backs where if you have a team out there, especially tonight, where you don't get Ashton Jeanty, you can still sit back and say, I'm okay with that. It's not Ashton Jeanty level, but Omarion Hampton really is a great running back.
Yeah, 5'11", 221 pounds. So he has the frame and the build that you want in the NFL to be an every down back. And he's got pretty good burst for his size. Mm-hmm. And he can catch the ball too. Doesn't have the breakaway speed, but every mock almost that I have seen has him going to Denver. And
which I love. Yeah,
we all are waiting for that running back in Denver. They've had a few backs. They've spread the ball around. And we know with the Sean Payton offense, we want that running back. So if he lands in Denver, he's absolutely going to be appealing. And I do see success for him. And, he'll be the RB2 just about every rookie draft, especially if he lands in Denver.
Absolutely. He's effective because when you look at him, he's got the traits. He's got not only patience, but then when you combine the patience with the speed and the power that you talk about with Omarion Hampton, that's just what makes him just reliable, like you said, on passing downs, just a really good overall guy coming into the NFL. And so, some of the other traits that he has is good contact balance. When you look at him, you look back at his college tape, and he has at least 67 missed tackles forced each of the past 2 seasons that we were just talking about. And then 4.35 yards after contact per attempt, which puts him in the 89th percentile. So there's not much more we can say about Hampton, although, Adam, the only, when you look at the other side of it, inconsistent pass blocker. I know that Thor Nystrom has talked with us about that before, but, he's just going to be good in the NFL. If he goes to the Denver Broncos, they're getting a stellar player that's obviously, like you said, going to be someone that we target in almost every single draft. I'm curious where you have, we've talked a good amount about Travion Henderson today out of Ohio State. His comp from Thor Nystrom was Reggie Bush over there. So he had a 4.43 40 at the scouting combine. Talk about the RAS score, a 9.43 RAS as well. And he is, this is somewhere where I see him ranked high, and then some other people just don't like him. But Travion Henderson overall seems like a great player as well that teams could go and get. If they don't get the Genties, if they don't get the Omarion Hamptons of the world, Travion Henderson is another great running back in this class.
Yeah, I think the pass catching is what's so appealing, right? He was one of the best pass catching backs in this class. So we talked about potentially Kansas City. That obviously would be a good spot. But, he had a great freshman season, good pedigree there at Ohio State. So I do like him, especially if he is going to be utilized heavily in a pass catching scenario. So we know that there's a lot of explosive plays from him out of the backfield.
Yep, he had 45 catches with only two drops the past 2 seasons, and had 0 career fumbles on 667 touches, by the way. So Travion Henderson, again, another really good guy over there that you can watch out for tonight. Well, probably not tonight. That would be, I don't think he goes in round 1, but these are going to be some of the round 2 guys. And then just really quickly, Adam, I wanted to mention Quinshon Judkins as well, because his comp was Joe Mixon. So if you know the top guys, but Quinshon Judkins is also a name that you should know. I know we've talked Caleb Johnson here before. I know we've talked a little bit about Dylan Sampson as well out of Tennessee, but that's just another name to know.
Yeah, big physical runner, 220 pounds. He's got some good burst and runs with good patience, and really good as a pass protector too. So the concern obviously is the pass catching with him, but they didn't ask him to do much at Ohio State.
Yeah, and he caught 59 catches with only 3 drops as well, 4.8% drop rate. So he's just also really good. I wanted to make sure we got him in there again. Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, we've talked about Caleb Johnson as well. You can check out all of the running back profiles though, fantasylife.com. All those articles 100% free. So you've got the rookie supermodel, you've got the Thor 500. So make sure if you want to know all about these guys to go to fantasylife.com and use that code early25. That gets you 25% off your first year of any Fantasy Life Plus package. Promo code early25, EARLY25 over there, fantasylife.com. Continuing on, Adam, we've got the NFL draft tonight. We have to do our favorite fantasy landing spots, the perfect landing spots that we want to see tonight. We're going to do that coming up next. This is Fantasy Life. We've had such a great time getting you guys ready for the NFL draft. It is finally here, just hours away, Adam. And yeah, we're just really excited. I'll text you if I'm sad or happy after tonight.
I'll likely know the outcome based on the pick, but yes, you can just text me to emphasize it, and this way I know.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. The Cowboys are going to do great. The Seahawks are going to do amazing, and we're just going to get all of our fantasy perfect landing spots. They're all going to come true. All of our dreams are going to come true.
We hope. Realistically, it's not going to happen, but I'll stick with your positive mindset and let's do it.
I couldn't even really finish that with a straight face, but let's do perfect fantasy landing spots. I know we've talked a lot about these guys here these past couple of days, and of course over at fantasylife.com. So curious our perfect landing spots, and of course I think we do have to start with Ashton Genty because he is the RB1 in this class in a tier of his own, really. So what is your favorite? If you had a choice, what would be your perfect fantasy landing spot for Ashton Genty?
Well, we know with him, it really doesn't matter. So there's several teams that you could say, I know they're not going to get him, but obviously Dallas is a good one, and Chicago too. I mean, those are really 2 good landing spots, but realistically, it's feeling like it's Jacksonville or Vegas unless there's a trade. But either way, I think he's still going to go late first round in fantasy drafts. So I really don't think it matters. But several of those teams that I mentioned seem to be really good spots.
Yeah, he's going first round. He's already going first round over there on Underdog, and we don't even know where he's at yet, what team he's going to. But that's just how good Ashton Genty is going to be in the NFL. You chase guys with upside like him, and he's just one of those running backs that no matter where he goes, if it is the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chicago Bears, Dallas Cowboys, like those 3 are the obvious ones. And then I guess now we can throw in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, it doesn't matter for Ashton Genty. Just go and get him in fantasy football and sit back and relax because he's going to be really good. I think a fun one for me was thinking that the Denver Broncos could move up to get him because that would also be a fun fantasy landing spot.
Oh, yeah.
The depth chart, I mean, for most of those teams that we just said, the depth chart doesn't really matter, but there's not a lot of competition there. We know Sean Payton's pretty good with some of these running backs, and then their offensive line also, it's a good offensive line. We talked about that earlier in the show as well. So I kind of like that one. It's more than likely not going to happen, but Broncos would be pretty fun. What about the best landing spot? I want to go over to Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona, obviously the wide receiver 1. If we don't count Travis Hunter over here, what would be your favorite landing spot for Tet?
There's a few teams, but I think Dallas has to be one of them. I know,
think so.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
I know I'm a fan, but when you look at the situation for them, they need someone opposite CeeDee Lamb, and there's a realistic possibility that he is there at 12. Jacksonville has been talked about. I don't see that happening. Maybe he falls further. I mean, if the Cowboys do go with an offensive lineman or a corner, then he really could fall. But I would think Dallas is definitely one of the top teams.
Yeah, I think, when we look at this for perfect fantasy landing spot, you have to look at the quarterback, the depth chart, and then just the system that they're in. So that's why I agree with you. Even though you're a fan, you can still say it. It's pretty good over there with Dallas and the Cowboys, with CeeDee Lamb obviously being the only high-end target earner on that team right now. What about, I think the Chargers would be fun. Like, I know that lads, I don't, again, this is perfect fantasy landing spot, and the chances of the Chargers going out and doing that would be pretty slim, but they only have Ladd McConkey over there. Justin Herbert, when we talk about the arm strength and just a really good quarterback, he, I think, could support 2 wide receivers over there. So Tedero, McMillan, Ladd McConkey, that could be fun.
Yeah, it would be. The thing why I didn't put him on that list is just that it's unlikely he lasts there. That's the only thing. But yeah, I mean,
we're doing
a lot of the,
it's a dream.
I know, but I also, you want to be a little realistic, right?
Okay.
Because we could just say like every top team.
Yeah, no, I don't want to be realistic.
Okay. But yeah, no, the Chargers certainly could use someone opposite McConkey.
If you want me to be realistic, no, I can't even say it. I was going to say the Jaguars, but I don't necessarily love the Trevor Lawrence situation quarterback-wise. I don't necessarily love the Brian Thomas, Liam Cohen going in there. I don't know.
If they do trade down, right? Say they do make a deal with Chicago, then maybe it's possible.
It is possible. Anything's possible. Adam,
yeah,
it's the NFL. Well. It's the NFL draft. All of our dreams could come true tonight. They probably won't, but it's fine.
It does feel like it's going to be wild and chaos.
It does, because there's just not a lot of that top tier talent, and so people might scramble. Oh, that would be crazy. Can we just ask for chaos tonight? Can we just do that?
I think we're getting it. I don't think we need to ask. It's coming.
Let's do it. All right, everyone, enjoy tonight. Again, fantasylife.com for all of our reactions. We'll see you here next time.